Hello and welcome to my fellow weirdos and wildlings. I am Vi, the Abysmal Witch, and today we are starting a non-different topic. We're going to go for part 4 in the part 3 series on ancestors. Did I say that correctly? Yes I did. I did intend up front for a 3-part series because that makes most sense, but there is a mystery behind it all. Capital M probably mystery, though a little tentative on that one. Maybe it's just a small M mystery behind it of the 4th grouping of ancestors. Yeah, I'm gonna. There's another little, but not gonna go into any extras. Just the one extra. So the 4th ancestor of the 3 groupings of ancestors, because they're not truly a part of it. It truly is a 3-part group in my worldview of bone, blood, and blitz ancestry. Whole and complete in and of itself. It needs no further embellishment. Awesome. However, that said, I do have a 4th group of ancestors that I work with regularly and specifically, actually, and primarily outside of those other 3. And they are the ancestors of witch. And that is what I call them consistently. I mean, I guess I sometimes call them my witchy ancestors, but mostly I talk about working with the ancestors of witch. Now, I have heard of witch blood for I don't know how long. Not from time immemorial, though, but in my witchy career, almost. I'm sure I heard the phrase witch blood back in like those very first beginning years. It didn't have a lot of clarity, though, and I've encountered it every once in a while since, and kind of different discussions on what it meant to have witch blood. And at this point, I'm just going to shrug and go, it's a thing that I've heard talked about. I have no idea the parameters on it in any way that is actively useful. So I simply know that that is something that people have talked about, that there are probably beliefs about that out there, and I don't even know them well enough to articulate them. So moving on. But I do mention it because if you wanted to say that our witch ancestry comes through blood, and thus is blood ancestry, and that's where I would argue with how I experience blood ancestry. The witch blood, there's a relation, but it is not the same. It's not like a subset of it. Venn diagram with high overlap, but not actively a subset of one to the other. Okay, and this one's going to be a little rambly, and you're like, wait a second, this peep is already the land of super rambly. How could this be worse? Oh, it can always be worse, and I think it might be today simply because articulating this is a little difficult, and this ties in a little bit with why I do wonder a teeny bit about whether or not there's some capital M mystery behind this, because mysteries have a tendency to be inarticulate. That's why they're mysteries. And if you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about with the capital M mystery part, well, if you've ever heard how Wicca is a mystery religion, that's what I'm talking about. And if you're like, that still doesn't actually explain anything, fair. What I mean by it is, and what my experience has been, that there are things, ways of knowing and experiencing the universe, and I mean that in the broadest sense, so both the mundane and arcane realms, all of them, all that is, but having experiences that go beyond simply a cognitive understanding or a somatic understanding and travel into a greater comprehension that opens up like a puzzle box, or allowing, if you've ever seen blooming tea, which is beautiful, by the way. It requires the right type of pot, but very beautiful to watch. This item that is a closed thing unfurling like a rosebud becoming a fully opened rose. There is an experience that is had that you cannot make happen with a mystery. I should probably talk about this in a separate episode. So I'm going to stop there. Otherwise, I will keep going, and this will not be the episode it was intending to be. And as distractible and digression-y as I am, I'm not going to do that today. So, hopefully you got a sense of what I mean by mystery. Moving back to our witch ancestors, the ancestors of witch, my experience with them has come through ritual workings that were about connecting with ancestry, my ancestry, the ancestry of my coven mates, and it was a very organic and, to be frank, accidental in the beginning situation. It was an impulse, which was undoubtedly a guided impulse into an action, into a ritual that became a true ritual, as in we kept doing it over and over again, that grew and expanded and included more people, and we came to understand the formula of it and how it all worked. And all of this came with working with the ancestors of witch. And you can see I'm still not truly defining, and this is kind of why I was saying rambling, because I can only touch it from the sides. I can't give it to you directly because it doesn't want that. It wants to be discovered. You have to go through the discovery process in order to truly understand it. Also a factor of mysteries. So the ancestors of witch are the practitioners of times before, is an easy way to put it. Of course, practitioner is a pretty fucking broad word when you start thinking about all of the essentially, the ancestors of which really include, you could kind of say there's two familial branches. Okay, here's where I'm going to share some weird but more practical, mundane thoughts that I've had about the ancestry of the idea of the witch. And kind of witch practitioner stuff. This is not actual history, okay? This is not me going, this is where it came from historically. No. This is my theory. That's what you're getting, my theorization of this. And that is that there are essentially two lines, or at least this is what I'm thinking of in the moment, because I've talked about this in the past, but it's been years since I've really thought about it. This is not planned that I was going down this particular road, so here we are. That the ancestry comes to us from indigenous practices. This is bone ancestry. Practices that grew up in relation to the land upon which we lived as we developed as a species. So we have similarities, and this is really core shamanism. Try to get at those similarities. Shamanism could be said to be, when used in a realistically, you could say appropriated way, because when you use the word shamanism broadly, shamanism itself is a magical spiritual practice, religious practice potentially, from the steppes, I think, Russian steppes part of the world. And the word was their word and then used by anthropologists in a more general way to describe really anyone who used more of this. You could also say folkloric, but there's a greater, I think, weight and empowerment we give to the word shamanism than we do to folkloric. I think that there is an automatic tendency to go, ooh, if it's folkloric, it's less than. not that it always is, but I think that there is a tendency towards that. So, wow, I'm umming a lot today. Must be struggling for words. The idea, so one of the ancestry comes from what developed in relationship naturally. It evolved naturally on the lands that we evolved on. And the commonalities are kind of, it's like, are very human, I guess is what I'll say. Like a frame drum. So a frame drum in my worldview or understanding is a round frame with a animal hide or some kind of drum hide, because now we can do synthetic, so it doesn't have to be animal. I've never heard of vegetable, though. So I am disinclined to drive beside the bus. Okay. But yes, you take a round frame, you stretch something over it, and you go thump, 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 and you make noise. And oh my God, that is something that is such a human thing to do. We love to do that. We love to put holes into tubey things and then make whistly things, flutes and such. Like we take strings and we stretch them and make them taut, and we make dingity ding 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 things. Like there are things that we like to do, and they are very common. And rattles also pretty common, actually, when I think about it. So these is an explicit and very tangible example of the commonality that happens across Indigenous practices from time immemorial, and using plants, let's say, using herbs and fires. Another fundamental human trait, throw it in a fire. We do love to burn things and cook things and make things smelly. Also, we smoke things and we eat things and we have impacts from them. So hallucinogens in that sense, often a tool in the shaman's toolkit, or, if you will, the witch's toolkit. So the word witch, of course, is much more modern than shamanic practices. And I don't know that you would say that witches are shamans. I think, again, Venn diagram with some amount of crossover, but not not a case where one is a subsidiary of the other. So ancestors of witch very much would have been, I have encountered, when I work with the ancestors of witch, I have encountered those who I would consider very shamanic in their nature. And yes, I'm talking about rituals where we contacted them, doing channeling and having direct conversation, stuff like that. So I've encountered, I don't know if we encountered any actual Wiccans. Did encounter more of a hoodoo priestess from New Orleans at one point, which was pretty cool. Or at least I assume New Orleans. We never actually asked her. Accent, well, and reference points were more indicated that way. What we did find, there was often a relation to one of the people in the ritual, either through bone or blood or bliss. So, yeah, we're connected to our witch ancestry through all of those lines. And often the ones that arrived were more of a bliss ancestor. They connected so strongly to the type of magic that we were working as individuals that they would come through and be helpful in deepening our understanding of the particular disciplines that we were studying and working in. So in that sense, the ancestors of witch are born out of all three of the other lines, which is why they're not aligned themselves. It's a three-sided pyramid, and they're on the top or the bottom, however you want to take it. But it's the three that weave together, and then any one of those can take part of that weaving and become a witch ancestor. I'm trailing off because that analogy totally failed in the end. So yeah, that's the ancestors of witch, the best I think that I can explain it at the moment. I have subsequently, I have not had the opportunity to listen to it, wondered how far I went when talking about ancestors of bliss into the mentorship part of it, of the deep connection that we have when we study deep and hard into a particular discipline that particularly led by specific individuals. So, for example, on the witchy side, you've got Gerald Gardner, huge influence. If you're going to talk Wiccan, you are talking Gerald Gardner, and other influences depending upon the tradition of Wicca that you practice. Absolutely, but he was essentially a founding father. An integral component of the development of witchcraft. I have studied Pilates very intensely. I am a certified instructor, and I was taught classical Pilates, which was essentially a direct lineage from Joseph Pilates down through my teachers onto myself. And lineage has a lot to play when you start getting into that kind of a viewpoint. And it's lineage not of the bone or of the blood, but of the bliss, of the understanding, of the passion and connection and information and working with and practice, very much about the practice. So I hope I did. But if I didn't, this is me sneaking in a little bit of the extra that I really should have talked about in that episode on ancestors of bliss, because it also very much relates to the ancestors of witch, because with the witch part, so often the connection was more about bliss than it was about blood or bone. Anyway, so ancestors like, was there anything else on the bliss part that I want to talk about? Just how rich and important it is to understand that there are these lines of communication, of practice that are deeply powerful and empowering, and that form very much a part of who we are, because that is what ancestry is. They form the very basis of our being. And when we go deep enough into a particular discipline, a particular way of doing, then we take on aspects of that ancestry into us. We acquire a worldview, a way of moving, a way of being that you can tell that someone with a knowing eye can tell that you have that influence. I share, for example, I was doing an exercise thing. It was a thing through work, and we were doing 3 sessions a week, and it was just like, whatever. Students were in charge of leading it, so we were working with like medicine ball or whatever, different exercises, and I don't have any clue at this point, it's been years, what movement we were doing, but it involved the arm somehow, and my arm went up or my arm went down, and one of the other participants looked at me and went, "Belly dancer?" Wait, how the fuck do you know that I do belly dancing? And it was the way I moved my arm. And it wasn't even like I was doing a pretty little hand kind of thing at the time. At least I don't think I was. But there was just something inherently in how I moved my arm that they had enough experience with understanding and recognizing belly dance. And it's not like they were themselves a belly dancer, that they could actually, they saw in my just generalized movement moment that I have that in me at this point. It has become part of me so much that it's a recognizable movement pattern that I was not conscious of whatsoever. So our ancestry of bliss has that impact. In martial arts, big one, that is so very much a grand example of this as well. So a lot of I find schools of thought I do think would also fall under this. But yeah, so that is my little addendum on Ancestors of Bliss. Ancestors of which are there for us and absolutely willing, some more happily than others. Yes, and I'm looking at you, Dee. You know I am. You love it. You know you do, even if you do grumbles. Sorry, can't help myself sometimes. Little side acknowledgement to an ancestor I worked with of a lot. It is also, I just want to say, rather blissful and comforting to have this connection, particularly when we don't have deep-rooted traditions in Wicca or even in witchcraft. Even the reconstructionists of the various magical groups. Oh, I was talking about ancestry and I only talked about the one side. Oh my God, so sorry. Let me get in quick. I think there's also an ancestral line on the witch side from the ceremonial magic, if you will, or grimoire magic. All of that Western oh my God, my brain is blanking. Esotericism, which is not the word I was looking for, but it's close enough. Western occultism, Western esotericism. I think also we have this deep influence from that as well, which again is not as old as the shamanic folkloric part, but that I think every place on the planet has that in its line. It's just that the European part did a really good job of wiping it out with Christianity and Catholicism in a lot of ways. In some places it's flourished and lasted better than others. Right, so two different lines, at least, that come into the witch line of understanding, and that they are there. And a group that we can connect with, which, again, as I was trying to get around to saying, that we don't have, a clear passing of information and lineage back through the millennia. We don't know what they did a millennium ago, especially 2 or 3 if you want to go back really far. We have some guesses, but that's all we've got. A few records, but not whole cloth of what happened and how people did their practices. And it wouldn't make sense now anyways, because they didn't have motorized vehicles that they traveled through for regularly long periods of time as they're commuting on top of asphalt, talking on an electronic device that even 30 years ago would have seemed absolutely, maybe 25. No, 30 years ago it was understandable. 40, 50 years ago was in the land of literally Star Trek. Star Trek was the first flip phone, in case you must realize. Okay, I think I'm just going to stop there. I don't think there's anything else that I can substantially add without adding in so much rambling padding that it detracts from the talking. So instead, we're going to call it a day, call this topic a wrap. I wish you all the very best in your day and in your life. I wish you blessed connection with your witchy ancestors and any of the ancestors that you love and wish to connect with. And may you find ease with those that are not so joyful or fun. Take great care of yourselves, and I shall see you anon. Blessings of the weird and wild to you. Blessed be.